All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this first webinar about the Ohio Family Network RFP. My name's Steve Beha. I am the Family Outreach and Education Coordinator for the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. Just a couple of housekeeping things. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Grant Opportunities page of the DODD website. So for any of you that want to go back and view this later, it will be posted there, as well in the attachments portion of Skype. If you are joining us online, you should be able to download this presentation as well. Second thing is, right now I have the audience muted, and I will pause periodically to take questions over some of the content that we're going to go over today. Also, feel free, again, if you are online, to type your questions into the instant message box, and I will go through those as well as we continue through the webinar. So we can get started, and first things first, this first webinar is just basically I'm going to go through the RFP, over the basics of it, and essentially just answer any questions that you might have about it or any clarifying points. The first two important things to know for those who may have submitted proposals before is some of the process has changed. The questions and proposals should all go through the same email address. So that is dodd.grant.applications@dodd.ohio.gov. So that's a little different than in the past, but this is a general mailbox that we are using now for all grant applications and questions for our fiscal team to be able to then give to folks who can answer those questions and who will be scoring the proposals. So just a really important point. Do not send questions directly to me. Send them to this email address, and that is where questions will be compiled and then answers posted online. So the purpose of this RFP is to basically form an Ohio network of services for families. And these networks should be led by folks with disabilities as well as their families, their siblings, and supported through collaborations with community partners. These family networks should help expand access to information and training, should foster connections to other people with developmental disabilities as well as their families and siblings, and should increase community engagement and capacity. The goal of the project is to leverage the knowledge, diversity, and strengths of people with developmental disabilities as well as their families and siblings, along with public and private resources, to establish an Ohio Family Network of services that is deeply integrated within the neighborhoods and local communities throughout Ohio. Through this project, DODD expects that people with developmental disabilities, as well as their families and siblings, will feel more confident and hold a more optimistic vision for their future, experience connections with other people with disabilities as well as other families and other siblings, and demonstrate greater understanding and support for self-advocacy and self-determination. They should have greater access and engagement with their local community. Additionally, DODD expects that local community partners will report an increased desire and ability to welcome and support people with developmental disabilities, as well as their families and their siblings. So a little bit of background on the project. So successful applicants will become members of the Ohio Family Network, or OFN, and will be required to support the vision and shared commitments of the Ohio Family Network. That vision and commitments are: disability is one of many types of human diversity. that families with high expectations for their children raise adults with high expectations, that all people with developmental disabilities, as well as their families and siblings, have strengths and valuable experiences, that peer support is sustainable and empowers families and changes lives, and empowered people with developmental disabilities and their families and siblings strengthen their communities. And the role of the service system is to complement the support that already exists within their communities. One of the major tenets or one of the major principles that will drive much of this work is asset-based community development, or ABCD principles. And those principles emphasize typical life experiences, public and private resources, non-paid supports, and moving from a sense of dependence to one of empowerment. And ABCD principles are really strength-based principles which use different tools and strategies to look at what strengths are already available to be utilized and to be built upon. So I'm going to pause right here. If you have any questions about the purpose or the background information that I just shared, please either type it in the message box, or I am going to unmute everybody now for a minute and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, I didn't see any or hear any, so we're going to keep going here. So building on those ABCD principles can help families and communities increase local capacity to meet the needs of community members while amplifying the strengths that exist locally. As outlined in Charting the Life Course framework, this includes 3 buckets. One, to provide information and increase skills. The second, to develop relationships, and the third, to increase access to goods and services. So some of the minimum qualifications to apply for this RFP is it must be an organization whose mission or work performed within the organization is consistent with the purpose of the RFP that we just went over. The organization's board of directors or responsible parties must include people with developmental disabilities or a parent, grandparent, or sibling of a person with a developmental disability. The organization or the proposed leadership of the organization the proposed leadership of the project from the organization must include a person with a developmental disability or a parent, grandparent, or sibling of a person with a developmental disability. It must be willing to provide support to families across multiple lifespans, from early intervention through aging. And the organization must be able to provide support to families in multiple counties, a minimum of 3 in Ohio. Next piece is some of the deliverables that you can expect throughout the course of the work. One would be develop a greater capacity locally for people with developmental disabilities, as well as their families, siblings, and communities, utilizing Charting the Life Course framework to meet their needs for discovery and navigation, relationship and networking, as well as goods and services. Expand access to non-disability related community resources and collaborate with governmental, nonprofit, for-profit organizations within their communities. Must provide targeted outreach to people with developmental disabilities as well as their families and siblings who are low income, non-English speaking, or minorities, including those living in rural areas of geographic regions. They should use each of the following resources as a strategy for supporting people with developmental disabilities as well as their families and siblings as in-person sessions. So the 3 designated resources are Charting the Life Course framework, growing family resilience, and families at the center of a connected community. Those three resources are resources that the department is providing for the Ohio Family Network. And we will go into more details about that if you have any questions about them. But just know that those will be available for participants in the Ohio Family Network to access. More deliverables will be to attend quarterly Ohio Family Network meetings with DODD and other grantees. And we will get those locations and dates out to you as soon as as the grants are awarded. A representative will attend quarterly OFN meetings with DODD. I'm sorry, I just repeated that one. So they will also use templates and data collection systems that are agreed to by DODD and the grantee to meet any reporting requirements that we determine. Quarterly reports will be submitted using those templates that reflect the completed and proposed activities to support families in each of the counties that the grantee is supporting families in. And then we also will have monthly calls or meetings, more technical assistance, in addition to the quarterly meetings described above with DODD. And then any of the activities or opportunities provided for people with developmental disabilities, as well as their families and siblings as a part of this RFP, will be designated as a project of the Ohio Family Network in partnership with the proposer and DODD, meaning that if there are family sessions that are done as a result of this work, as a result of this grant, that it will be done on behalf of the Ohio Family Network and can be presented by the organization that is organizing it. So I'm going to pause here. I just went over a lot of information around the minimum requirements and some of the deliverables. Again, pausing for any questions within the instant message box, and I am going to unmute the audience to see if anybody has any questions.
Steve, this is Gary Tonks.
Hey.
Hey, so when you say organization, does it have to be an incorporated entity, or does it have to be a for-profit or non-for-profit?
No, we did not designate one or the other in that. We wanted to leave it open for folks for as many possibilities for proposals. So no, there's no designation of for-profit, not-for-profit. The only real qualification that we're looking for kind of in that area is if you do have a board or responsible parties for the organization, that they be that at least includes folks with developmental disabilities or family members, and also that the project lead team, if it is a team, or if it's singular person, is a person with a disability or a family member.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other questions right now, so we'll move to the next portion. The funding piece. So this grant is funded with state dollars, and the expectation is that DODD will award grants not to exceed a total of $300,000 in fiscal year 20 and an additional $300,000 in fiscal year 21. So that means that all the awardees added together cannot exceed those amounts. They can be different amounts in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 as you are coming up with your budgets for the proposals. But just know that as we are calculating how much can be spent, those are the max amounts for all proposals or all grantees combined is $300,000 in each fiscal year. And then the methodology that we use for the funding is the highest scoring proposals will be funded until the total available funding for the project is awarded. So the period that we expect the work to be done in is January 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. So you have an 18-month period there that crosses the fiscal year. And then grants will be funded on a reimbursement basis for deliverables and activities completed. That agreement between DODD and the grantee will specify the timelines of completion of each activities, deliverable, and payment structure. So that would include things like the quarterly report sheets and any data collection that we put into place. These are some of the timelines that you'll see within the RFP. Today we are doing the webinar in call 1. There'll be an additional one on October 21st that will be similar to this one. But if you have, through your process of looking into it more, come up with more questions, we'll have that opportunity available on October 21st. And then if you would like to submit written questions, you can do that anytime up until October 22nd of 2019. And then we will post answers to all written questions on October 28th. The proposals are due by noon on November 25th, and we'll make notifications of award by December 16th. Again, wanted to say this again, that any written questions need to be emailed to the new grant application email address, which is dodd.grant.applications@dodd.ohio.gov. Make sure your subject line has your organization name, and also in the subject line reference Ohio Family Network, State Fiscal Year 20 Q&A if you're looking for answers to your written inquiries. And again, can't emphasize this enough, that grant proposals, the grant application form, and the other required documentation must be submitted electronically to that same email address no later than noon, 12 o'clock p.m. on November 25th, 2019. Any proposals received after that time and date will not be scored. Actually, I think that's a good point to pause as well. Any questions about the funding, submission process, timelines? I am unmuting the audience now.
Hi, another question.
Yeah.
The first fiscal year 20 is only really a 6-month period.
Correct.
Can the budget be, let's say, 100,000? This is just an example for 20, and then in essence, can funding be carried over into the next fiscal year?
That is something. Yeah, go ahead.
You got it.
Yeah, so we can talk about that. I think the deliverables will be pretty specific within each fiscal year to hit those.
Okay.
Normally, I'll say this. The budget that is submitted should be pretty specific in what it is expected to be used in fiscal year 20 versus fiscal year 21. Those deliverables will likely be based on quarterly reports and data that won't necessarily be tied to specific sessions or things like that. So it is not likely that funding would need to be carried over, just kind of based on the framework of what this project looks like. Now, if there are some nuances and some unique circumstances that the proposer has in their budget that looks like it could carry over, that would be something that we would have to kind of have a side interview about to determine whether or not that was available to do.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay. No other questions. So proposals will be selected using a competitive process. DODD will not consider grant proposals that do not include all of the required documents identified in the RFP. All required documents must be clearly labeled by the applicant, or they may not be considered. DODD shall not consider proposals received after the submission deadline or for any other requirement identified in the RFP that is not met. Proposals eligible for review shall be scored in accordance with the procedure set forth in the RFP, and all proposals will be reviewed and scored by a proposal review committee, which will include at least 2 representatives from DODD. The following items must be clearly labeled and submitted to DODD in order to be eligible for scoring: responses to the required questions, a completed grant application form, budget and budget justification summary, and a statement of support and acceptance of all terms by the head of the applicant organization. Letters of support are required from at least 2 non-disability specific community partners and at least 2 families currently utilizing services from the organization. Letters will not be accepted from people who are employed by the applicant or who are members of the organization's board of directors or responsible parties. Should also submit a list of counties, 3 at minimum, in which the organization intends to establish a family network as described in the RFP. The proposals will be scored on a basis of 100 points. The budget and budget justification summary consists of 10 of those points, and then the required questions will account for the remaining 90 points. Responses to the questions should not exceed 10 pages, with all the margins and font types listed there. DODD reserves the right to deduct points for proposals that exceed the page limitations, and answers to the required questions should be clearly matched to the corresponding question. The question topics consist of organization, which will be worth 20 points. How the family network will be implemented will be worth 40 points. Who the organization intends to partner with in the community will be worth 20 points. And the geographic area that the organization intends to serve will be worth 10 points. And each of those questions are outlined within the RFP. So again, one more pause here to see if anybody has any questions. Okay. So none typed in either. So these last 2 slides are just recaps so that you know the timelines and then also the deadlines for everything. So timelines, next webinar call will be on October 21st. The number and the link are listed directly in the RFP. RFP questions due to DODD by October 22nd. We will post clarification on those questions on the grant opportunities section of our website on October 28th. And then proposals are due to DODD by November 25th, 2019, 12 o'clock p.m. We will make notification of award on December 16th of 2019 and looking to get the work started on January 1st of 2020. Again, important parts to remember are that all written questions and proposals should be sent to dodd.grant.applications@dodd.ohio.gov. And the subject lines should contain the applicant's organization name, as well as Ohio Family Network State Fiscal Year 20. And if you're submitting a question, include Q&A in that subject title. All this is outlined within the RFP. So if you have questions or need that email address or any of these timelines, they're all within the request for proposal link that is on the grant opportunities section of the DODD website. You can get there by going to dodd.ohio.gov, click on About Us, and Grants, and that will take you to the grant portion of the website. So I'm going to pause one last time to see if there are any questions about this. Barbara asks, will the content of the next webinar be the same as today? Yes, essentially it will be. It will basically go over the RFP details as we did today. It is essentially a second opportunity for folks to think about it a little bit more and come back with specific questions around either the deliverables, minimum qualifications, as you are writing your proposal, if you have specific questions in there. But yes, the presentation itself will likely be very, very similar to this. Thank you for the question, Barbara. Any other questions before we take this off air? Well, thank you everybody who attended and took the time out of their day to listen and watch. This webinar will be posted on that grant opportunities page as well if you want to go back and watch or listen to it. Hope to have that up sometime next week for you. So thank you again, and everybody have a wonderful day.